undercover boss into his own store, and what he witnessed over the next 8 hours changed everything. His store manager was exploiting exhausted employees and abusing his power. When he saw a worker nearly collapse from hunger, he could no longer stay silent. What happened next would make the arrogant manager regret his actions. Before we dive in, what time are you listening? Where are you from? Drop a comment below and tell me. The morning sun cast long shadows across the mahogany desk as Marcus Thompson pressed his fingertips against the cool glass of the 35th floor window. Below him, the city of San Francisco buzzed with the familiar rhythm of rush-hour traffic, tiny cars weaving between concrete arteries like blood cells through veins. But Marcus wasn't watching the traffic. His dark eyes were fixed on something much farther away, something only he could see. The leather chair creaked softly as he turned back toward his desk, where two objects sat side by side in deliberate contrast. On the left, a faded photograph in a cracked plastic frame showed a younger version of himself, maybe 17, all sharp elbows and defiant eyes, standing next to a woman whose smile couldn't quite hide the exhaustion etched into her face. Behind them, a rusted trailer sagged on cinder blocks, its aluminum siding patched with duct tape and prayers. On the right, crisp pages of quarterly reports bore numbers that would make most CEOs weep with joy: $2.3 billion in revenue, profits up 12%, stock price climbing steadily toward the stratosphere. Marcus picked up the photograph with hands that had once unloaded trucks at 4 in the morning and now signed contracts worth millions. His mother's face stared back at him, frozen in time before the cancer took her, before she could see what her son had built from nothing. "You made it, baby," she had whispered in those final days, her voice barely audible over the hospital machines. "You showed them all," but had he? Marcus set the photo down carefully and reached for his coffee, Ethiopian single origin, roasted by a small company in Oakland that reminded him of his first store. The liquid had gone cold, bitter against his tongue. 26 years had passed since he'd stood in that trailer park, listening to his mother count quarters for groceries while she got ready for her third job of the day. 26 years since he'd walked into Morrison's Market on Crenshaw Boulevard, desperate for work, only to have the manager look him up and down like he was something that had crawled out of a storm drain. "Listen, boy," the man had said, not bothering to look up from his clipboard, "we don't usually hire your kind for customer-facing positions. But we need someone for the warehouse. You can lift boxes, right? That's about all you people are good for anyway." Marcus had swallowed the rage, the humiliation, the urge to walk out and never come back. Instead, he'd nodded and said, "Yes, sir. When do I start?" Because his mother needed the money. Because his little sister needed school supplies. Because sometimes survival meant biting your tongue until it bled. The memory tasted worse than the cold coffee. His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom, pulling him back to the present. "Mr. Thompson, the board meeting has been moved to 10:30. And your wife called about dinner tonight." "Thank you, Jennifer." Marcus straightened his tie. Italian silk, dark blue, the kind of accessory that cost more than most people made in a week. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd become everything he'd once envied, everything that had seemed impossibly out of reach from the windows of that rusted trailer. So why did he feel like something was missing? The answer came in the form of an email notification pinging on his computer screen. Personal account, sender unknown. Marcus frowned as he clicked it open, his stomach tightening as he read the words that would change everything. "Mr. Thompson, I can't give you my name. I'm too scared of losing my job. But I work at your Riverside location, and I need you to know what's happening here. Things have changed since you visited us 3 years ago. Our new manager, Brett Morrison, is making us work 14-hour shifts without overtime pay. Anyone who complains gets their hours cut or gets fired. Last week, Maria collapsed from exhaustion after working 16 hours straight. We're desperate, Mr. Thompson. Please help us." Marcus read the email twice, then a third time, each word hitting him like a physical blow. Riverside. The neighborhood where he'd grown up, where 68% of the population looked like him, where kids still played in streets that hadn't been repaved since the Reagan administration. He'd opened that store specifically to bring jobs and fresh food to his old community, to prove that success didn't mean forgetting where you came from. His hands shook slightly as he reached for his phone to call Sarah Collins, his vice president of human resources. She answered on the second ring, her voice crisp and professional. "Marcus, what's wrong? You sound..." "Sarah, I need you to pull all the reports from our Riverside location. Everything, schedules, payroll, employee complaints, the works. A pause. Is there a problem? Marcus stared at the email on his screen, at the desperation bleeding through anonymous words. That's what I'm trying to find out. I can have HR investigate by the end of the week. No. The word came out sharper than he'd intended. Marcus took a breath, trying to control the anger building in his chest. No investigations, no corporate teams. I want to see this for myself. Marcus, you can't be serious. You're the CEO of a billion-dollar company. You don't do field visits anymore. Send someone else. But Marcus was already reaching for his car keys, his mind made up. Sarah, if I can't trust the voices of my own employees, how can I trust the numbers in these reports? The line went quiet. In the silence, Marcus heard his mother's voice again, clearer now. You showed them all, baby. But don't you dare forget where you came from. He wouldn't forget. Not today, not ever again. The Honda Civic's engine coughed to life in the pre-dawn darkness, its familiar rumble a stark contrast to the purring Mercedes that usually carried Marcus to work. He'd pulled the 20-year-old car from the back corner of his garage, where it sat beneath a tarp like a relic from another life. Marcus caught his reflection in the side mirror as he backed out of his Marin County driveway. 3 days of stubble darkened his jaw, and the gray hoodie he'd found buried in his closet made him look like any other guy heading to an early shift. Today he was nobody special. Today he was just another man trying to make it through. The drive to Riverside took him through neighborhoods that shifted like layers of sediment, each mile marking another step down the economic ladder. By the time Marcus pulled into the Green Mart parking lot, the sun was painting the eastern sky in shades of amber and rose. Marcus pushed through the automatic doors at exactly 6:15, the familiar chime of the entrance sensor echoing in the cavernous space. The store stretched before him like an aircraft hangar, 500 square meters of gleaming shelves and carefully arranged displays. But something felt wrong. In the produce section, boxes sat unstacked. The bakery counter remained dark. Only 2 employees moved through the entire space, their footsteps echoing in the emptiness. Near the front registers, a young man with warm brown skin and quick efficient movements was doing the work of 4 people. Marcus watched as Jamal Rodriguez, though he didn't know the name yet, switched seamlessly between scanning items for an elderly customer, restocking the impulse buy candy display, and wiping down surfaces with a rag that had seen better days. Sweat beaded on the young man's forehead despite the morning cool, and his Green Mart polo shirt bore the wrinkles of someone who'd been moving non-stop since his shift began. Marcus selected a shopping basket and began moving through the aisles, letting his businessman's eye catalog every detail. The shelves were well stocked, the floors clean, the organic produce section arranged with obvious care. But the store felt stretched thin, like a rubber band pulled to its breaking point. At the checkout, an elderly woman with a walker was growing increasingly agitated as Jamal struggled to keep up with the growing line. "What's taking so long?" she snapped, her voice carrying the sharp edge of someone whose patience had long since evaporated. "I have a doctor's appointment. Some of us have places to be." Marcus watched Jamal's face carefully as the young man absorbed the criticism. Instead of snapping back or offering a perfunctory apology, Jamal's expression softened with genuine concern. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. Let me help you get these bags to your car. I know that walker makes it tough to carry everything." The woman's irritation melted slightly as Jamal stepped around the counter, carefully loading her purchases into her cart and walking with her toward the exit. Marcus found himself holding his breath, waiting for a supervisor to appear and berate the young man for leaving his post. But no one came. Jamal was on his own. When Jamal returned, Marcus stepped forward with his modest selection of coffee and a breakfast sandwich. "Busy morning," he offered, studying the young man's face. Jamal's smile was tired but genuine. "Every morning's busy here, sir, but it's good work, honest work." He scanned Marcus's items with practiced efficiency, his movements economical and precise. "You been working here long?" Marcus asked, keeping his voice casual. 3 years come December, Jamal replied, glancing at the digital clock above the register. Marcus followed his gaze and realized the young man had been working for over 4 hours without a break. "It's a good place to work, steady, you know. In this neighborhood, that means everything." Marcus studied Jamal's face, noting the slight tremor in his hands that spoke of exhaustion, the way his eyes kept darting to a small photo taped to his register, a little girl with pigtails and a gap-toothed grin. You look tired though. Long shifts. Jamal's laugh held no humor. 26 hours yesterday, sir. But I've got a little girl to feed, and well, he shrugged, the gesture carrying the weight of 1,000 compromises. Rent in this city doesn't care if you're tired. Before Marcus could respond, heavy footsteps announced the arrival of someone who clearly considered himself very important. Brett Morrison strode across the store floor like a general surveying his troops, his polo shirt stretched tight across his barrel chest, and his voice carrying the particular authority of a man drunk on his own small power. Rodriguez, Brett's voice cracked across the store like a whip. What did I tell you about chatting with customers? This isn't a social club. Marcus watched Jamal's shoulders tense, saw the young man's jaw clench almost imperceptibly before he plastered on a deferent smile. Sorry, Mr. Morrison, just helping the customer. Help him by ringing him up and moving him along. Brett shot back, then turned his attention to a young woman who'd been restocking shelves nearby. And Maria, 5 minutes sitting down. What do you think this is, vacation time? The woman, barely out of her teens, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of too little sleep and too much worry, scrambled to her feet so quickly she nearly knocked over a display of canned tomatoes. I'm sorry, Mr. Morrison, I was just nothing. I'm paying you to work, not to rest. Anyone who doesn't like it can find the door. Marcus felt something hot and familiar rise in his chest, the same rage he'd swallowed 26 years ago when another manager had spoken to him like he was something less than human. But this time, he wasn't a desperate teenager with a sick mother and empty pockets. This time, he had choices. Excuse me, Marcus said, stepping forward with the careful politeness of a customer who'd witnessed something unpleasant. I couldn't help but notice your management style. Is this typical for Green Mart? Brett turned toward Marcus with the predatory smile of a man who enjoyed confrontation. And you are? A customer, Marcus replied evenly. Someone who cares about how employees are treated, since it tends to affect service quality. Brett's laugh was harsh and dismissive. Oh great, another bleeding heart. Let me guess, you think we should pay these people to sit around and chat all day? This is a business, pal, not a charity case. He stepped closer, using his height advantage like a weapon. You got a problem with how I run my store, you can take it up with corporate. But something tells me they care more about profit margins than your feelings. Marcus felt Jamal's eyes on him, saw the mixture of hope and resignation in the young man's face. In that moment, he made a decision that would change everything. You know what? Marcus said, pulling out his phone. I think I will. Marcus had spent the better part of 8 hours moving through the aisles like a ghost, watching, listening, and documenting every detail of what he was beginning to understand was systematic exploitation. He'd watched Brett Morrison reduce 3 different employees to tears, seen a 19-year-old named Kevin forced to work a double shift without overtime, and witnessed Maria collapse into a chair for exactly 90 seconds before being screamed at to get back to work. But it was the sight of Jamal Rodriguez swaying behind the register at 2 o'clock that finally pushed Marcus past the point of silent observation. Jamal's hands trembled as he tried to scan a customer's groceries, his movements sluggish and uncoordinated. The young man gripped the edge of the counter with white knuckles, his face pale beneath the harsh lighting. When the customer moved on, Jamal pressed his palms flat against the register and closed his eyes, breathing in short, shallow gasps. Marcus approached the counter with the careful steps of someone approaching a wounded animal. Hey, are you okay? Jamal's eyes snapped open, and he forced his spine straight with visible effort. Yes, sir. Sorry, just a little tired. What can I help you with? But Marcus could see the truth written in the hollow circles beneath Jamal's eyes, in the way his shirt hung loose on his frame, in the tremor that ran through his entire body. When's the last time you ate something? The question seemed to hit Jamal like a physical blow. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard, and for a moment, his carefully maintained composure cracked. This morning, I had some coffee this morning. That was 12 hours ago. Jamal's laugh was brittle, breaking apart at the edges. I forgot to bring money for lunch. And this month's paycheck it was lighter than usual. 20% cut across the board, Mr. Morrison said. Economic difficulties. Marcus felt something twist in his gut, a familiar ache that took him back to his own 19-year-old self, standing in a different store, listening to a different manager explain why he didn't deserve to be paid what he was worth. Without a word, Marcus walked to the deli counter and returned with a turkey sandwich and a bottle of water, setting them down in front of Jamal. Eat, he said simply. Jamal stared at the food, like it might disappear if he moved too quickly. Sir, I can't accept this. I don't even know your name. It's Marcus, and yes you can. The first bite seemed to unlock something in Jamal's chest. His shoulders shook, and tears began streaming down his face with an intensity that spoke of months of held-back emotion. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice breaking apart like glass. I'm so sorry. I don't want to be like this. I don't want to be the guy who cries at work because someone bought him a sandwich. Marcus leaned against the counter, remembering his own mother's tears when the electricity got shut off, remembering the shame that burned hotter than anger when you had to choose between pride and survival. How old is your daughter? The question seemed to surprise Jamal. 4. Her name's Sophia. She's everything. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands, showing Marcus a photo of a little girl with pigtails and a smile that could power the entire city. She starts pre-K next month, real school, not just daycare. She's so excited. His voice cracked again. I just want to give her what I never had. I want her to grow up thinking anything is possible. Marcus studied the photo, seeing his own childhood reflected in Jamal's desperation. His own mother's sacrifices echoed in every word. What did you want to be when you grew up? I wanted to open a coffee shop, Jamal said, his voice barely audible. Somewhere people could come and feel at home. Somewhere that felt like community. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Stupid dream, right? Guy like me, thinking he could own something. The words hit Marcus like a punch to the solar plexus. Guy like me, the same phrase he'd used 1,000 times in his 20s, when the world seemed designed to remind him that people who looked like him, who came from where he came from, weren't supposed to dream big. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, his fingers steady despite the storm raging in his chest. The time had come to stop watching and start acting. Sarah, he said when his VP picked up on the first ring. I need you to cancel everything on my schedule for the rest of the day, and get legal on the line. We have a serious problem at Riverside. Marcus, what's going on? You've been gone all day, and the board is asking questions. The board can wait. Right now, I need you to pull every employment record for this location, every payroll report, every complaint filed in the last 6 months. Someone's been running a sweatshop under our name, and it ends today. Marcus ended the call and turned back to Jamal, who was staring at him with an expression of pure confusion. Before either of them could speak, heavy footsteps announced Brett Morrison's approach. What the hell is going on here? Brett's voice carried across the store like a bullhorn. Rodriguez, why aren't you working? And you? He pointed at Marcus with the aggressive confidence of a man who'd never had his authority questioned. You've been sitting around here all day, like you own the place. Either buy something or get out. Marcus stood slowly, pulling off his baseball cap and sunglasses with deliberate precision. The fluorescent lights caught his face, illuminating features that had graced the covers of business magazines, that had been photographed shaking hands with presidents and tech moguls. You're right, Marcus said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who'd never needed to raise it to be heard. I do own the place. The silence that followed was absolute. Brett's face went through a rapid series of color changes, from red to white to a sickly green that suggested his breakfast was staging a revolt. Behind the register, Jamal's mouth fell open, and Marcus could hear the soft sound of a shopping cart being abandoned as customers realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. I'm Marcus Thompson, he continued, his words cutting through the silence like a blade. And I think you and I need to have a very serious conversation about how you've been running my store. Brett's mouth opened and closed several times before any sound emerged. Mr. Thompson, sir, I had no idea you were, I mean if I'd known what, that you shouldn't treat human beings like garbage, that you shouldn't work people 14 hours without overtime, that you shouldn't cut wages while profits are up 18. Marcus's voice remained level, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Help me understand, Brett, which part of basic human decency required my presence to activate? You have 5 minutes, Marcus said quietly, to explain to me how you've been running my store. And Brett, I suggest you choose your words very carefully. Brett Morrison's 5 minutes stretched into an eternity of stammered excuses and corporate doublespeak. He talked about efficiency metrics and labor optimization, about quarterly targets and competitive pressures, about directives from corporate that Marcus knew had never been issued. With each passing second, Brett's face grew redder, his voice more desperate, until finally Marcus raised a hand and the torrent of words stopped. Enough, Marcus said quietly. The single word carried the weight of absolute authority. Brett, you're relieved of duty effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect your personal items, and you'll report to HR at corporate tomorrow morning. Brett's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Sir, you can't. I mean, I've been with the company for 8 years. I have performance reviews, metrics that show you've been exploiting my employees while I wasn't watching. Marcus's voice cut through Brett's protests like a blade, and that ends now. Within 20 minutes, Brett Morrison was walking through the automatic doors for the last time, his cardboard box of personal effects clutched against his chest like armor that no longer fit. The store fell into an eerie quiet, 15 employees standing frozen in the aftermath of witnessing their tormentors fall. Marcus walked to the small break room behind the customer service counter, a cramped space, barely large enough for the 3 broken plastic chairs and a coffee machine that looked older than some of the employees. Everyone off the floor, he called out, his voice carrying across the store. I need to talk to all of you. Right now. They gathered slowly, like survivors emerging from a storm shelter, unsure whether the danger had truly passed. Maria clutched a box of tissues, her eyes still red from crying. Kevin, the 19-year-old who'd been forced to work doubles, stood with his back pressed against the wall, as if he might need to run. Jamal sat in one of the plastic chairs, still holding the sandwich Marcus had bought him, his daughter's photo visible on the table beside him. Marcus stood before them, this small group of people who'd been ground down by a system that should have protected them, and felt the full weight of his responsibility settling on his shoulders like a lead blanket. These weren't numbers on a spreadsheet or line items in a budget report. They were human beings who trusted his company with their livelihoods, their families' futures, their dreams. I need to tell you something about myself, Marcus began, his voice softer than it had been all day. I grew up about 15 miles from here, in a trailer park that got torn down to build condos. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep food on our table, cleaning offices at night, stocking shelves during the day, and taking in ironing on weekends. I know what it feels like to choose between groceries and electricity. I know what it feels like to be treated like you don't matter. He paused, looking at each face in turn, seeing his own reflection in their mix of hope and wariness. When I started this company, I made myself a promise. I swore that no one who worked for me would ever feel the way I felt when I was 20 years old, standing in a store not unlike this one, being told I wasn't worth a living wage because of the color of my skin. Maria wiped her eyes with a crumpled tissue. Mr. Thompson, we didn't know you were. I mean, Brett always said corporate didn't care about stores like this one. Brett was wrong about a lot of things, Marcus replied, and I'm going to prove it to you starting right now. He pulled out his phone and made a quick call. Sarah, I need payroll to process immediate raises for the entire Riverside team, 25% across the board, effective today, and calculate all the overtime they've been denied for the past 6 months. I want checks cut by Friday. The gasps that rippled through the small room were audible. Jamal's hands shook as he set down his sandwich. Sir, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Marcus interrupted. This isn't charity, Jamal. This is justice. This is me fixing what I should have caught months ago. He scrolled through his phone, making notes as he spoke. Full health insurance, company paid, dental and vision too. And I'm setting up a scholarship fund for your children. Every employee's child will have access to college tuition assistance. The silence that followed was different from the fearful quiet that had dominated the store all day. This was the silence of people afraid to believe that their lives might actually be about to change. Marcus looked directly at Jamal, remembering the photo of Sophia, remembering his own daughter's privileged childhood, and the opportunities that came with having a father who'd already climbed the mountain. Jamal, I have a proposition for you. I need an assistant manager here, someone who understands what this community needs, someone who's lived the life our customers live. The salary is double what you're making now, plus benefits, plus tuition assistance if you want to finish your business degree. Jamal's eyes filled with tears for the second time that day, but these tears were different. Mr. Thompson, I don't know what to say. Say yes, Maria whispered from across the room. Jamal, you've been taking care of all of us for 3 years. It's time someone took care of you. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Marcus closed the store for 3 days, bringing in contractors to renovate the break room with comfortable furniture, a full kitchen, and windows that actually let in natural light. He installed new security cameras, repaved the parking lot, and hired enough staff so that no one would ever again have to work 14-hour shifts. But the real changes went deeper than fresh paint and new equipment. Marcus instituted flexible scheduling that accommodated parents and students. He created employee recognition programs that came with real financial rewards. He established an anonymous feedback system that bypassed local management entirely, reporting directly to his office. 3 months later, the Riverside store had become something unprecedented in the retail industry. A place where people actually wanted to work. Applications poured in from across the city. Turnover, which had been running at 60% annually, dropped to 12%. Customer satisfaction scores soared as employees who felt valued began treating customers like valued guests rather than inconveniences. The success didn't go unnoticed. The Wall Street Journal ran a front-page story titled "CEO Goes Undercover, Changes Everything." Business schools began studying the Riverside model as a case study in sustainable human resource management. Social media exploded with videos of employees sharing their stories, their gratitude, their renewed faith in the possibility of decent work. But success brought its own challenges. Some shareholders grumbled about the increased labor costs, calling Marcus's initiatives bleeding heart liberalism that would tank the stock price. Competitor companies began aggressively recruiting Green Mart's newly happy workforce, offering sign-on bonuses and promises of even better treatment. Marcus fielded angry calls from board members who worried about setting precedents that other employees might expect. "You can't run a business like a charity," warned Robert Chen, his longest-serving board member. "These people will take advantage of your generosity." "These people," Marcus replied, his voice carrying an edge that made Chen fall silent, "are the reason we have a business at all. And they're not taking advantage, they're finally getting what they should have had from the beginning." The ripple effects continued to spread. Marcus announced the Green Mart Promise, a company-wide commitment to employee welfare that included monthly anonymous surveys, mandatory leadership visits to every store, and a hotline for reporting workplace problems that bypassed local management entirely. Within 6 months, Green Mart had received over 10,000 job applications. The company's Glassdoor rating jumped from 2.3 stars to 4.7 stars. Most importantly, stores that had implemented the Riverside model saw revenue increases of 20 to 30% as engaged employees created better customer experiences. Standing in the renovated Riverside break room on a sunny afternoon, watching Jamal conduct a staff meeting with the confidence of a natural leader, Marcus thought about the anonymous email that had started everything. Somewhere out there, an employee had taken a tremendous risk to reach out to him. That person had trusted him to care, to act, to remember where he came from. Marcus pulled out his phone and began typing an email to all 180 store managers. "Tomorrow I'll be visiting one of your stores. You won't know which one, and you won't know when, but I'll be watching. And if I find even one employee being treated the way Brett Morrison treated the team at Riverside, you'll be looking for a new job by the end of the day." He hit send and smiled, thinking about his mother's voice, about promises kept and circles completed. The revolution had begun.